Hi, I am Jeantine. I am very privileged to be the social change lead at ThoughtWorks. I'm really happy that you've taken the time to check out this talk. I think it's not only like a very important one, but it's certainly very topical. And I just wanted to start by saying, like, my background is as a developer. I was a developer for 12 years, and I got into tech because I really like building things. And I want to say that I think tech has a huge capacity for improving the world. So it's not at all that I'm against technology. I just think that it's time, given what we're seeing out there in the world, for us to just tread a little bit more carefully and think a little bit more deeply about what we're building. So, like I said, it's very topical. Like, you don't have to look very far at the moment to see that tech is causing harm, like from Uber and Deliveroo creating precarious workers, from social media addiction and fake news to Instagram being like noted as the #1 worst app for young people's mental health, to Cambridge Analytica and Facebook debacle, like challenging democracy. And even more recently, like sort of the big tech giants banning Trump from their platforms. And I'm not pro-Trump at all, but I think it does sort of raise an interesting question, right? Like, should these big players have that much power in the world? And so I'm happy that that awareness is there, and I think it's awoken even beyond like the technology community. Even my friends who are not in tech are starting to see this and notice the problems. But having said that, I think even within the technology community, I still think that we see the problem as other, and that we see it as a problem with these big tech giants and with social media in particular. And I think although those problems, I mean, they do have a lot of influence and huge impact on the world, that it is prevalent in what we are building day to day as well. And I just wanted to take some time to tell a couple of very personal stories about how tech has, I guess, negatively impacted me in my life, and some are like obvious, and some I think in some ways more interesting that are not as clear cut. So the first story is my own. This is a picture of me pre-pandemic when we could still have haircuts. It's great. And I wouldn't be a developer at heart if this wasn't my motto in life. There is always more to learn. Anyway, I used to take the tube to work in London. And when I was on the tube, I'd see a lot of people like playing on their phone, playing all these games. And I was always kind of curious if that looks interesting. But for me, I sort of kept my tube time, my commuting time was my reading time. So I didn't indulge. However, a lockdown happened. And suddenly I found myself with a lot more time on my hands. And I think I got this ad on my phone saying, hey, there's this game. And I thought, well, why not? I've got more time, why don't I try it? And I downloaded this game here called June's Journey to my phone. June's Journey is like a sort of like a murder mystery game, if you like. You go through scenes and you're looking for clues within those scenes, and sort of the story unravels as you go through more and more scenes. However, the game itself is free, but you only have a limited amount of playtime. And there's 2 ways that you can continue playing this game. One is either to like buy more energy, and it can cost like something from, I don't know, a couple of pounds each time, or you can wait, and you can wait. It might be, depending on what you're trying to progress, anything between like 20 minutes to like a couple of days even. And so I was definitely adamant that I was not going to pay. There was no way that I was going to pay to have more playtime, because I could see where this was going very quickly, right? At a couple of pounds a pop, and probably, you know, multiple times a day, because I was quite enjoying this game, that was going to add up very quickly, and it was going to cost a lot more than, say, I would have been willing to pay for the game up front if you told me. So yeah, I didn't do that. I thought, well, it's fine. You know, I can still continue playing this game because I just have to wait, right? And in some ways it's good. My playtime is limited. I just have to wait until the time is up and I continue playing. However, what I quickly found is the way it is that you get very addicted to the game, and you're sort of not bored of it by the time your playtime runs out. And because it's a story, you're really keen to find out what happens next. So anytime that my time was up and I could play again, I would. And so it became like first thing in the morning, it would be what I would do. It would be what I would do in the weekends. It would be what I would do in breaks between work. And I quickly started to notice that this was becoming a problem. It was impacting on my sleep, it was impacting on my social life, and it was even starting to impact on my work. And so I you know, realized, luckily, I realized this and thought, I know what I have to do. I have to delete this game. And even then, it took like a couple of weeks to build up the willpower to press that delete button. Luckily, I did. But I think, to me, this is a clear harm, and like this kind of hooking you in this sort of business model just shouldn't be allowed, right? And I tell this story actually in our inductions at work, and I've definitely had many people nodding along and saying, yeah, that happened to me too. And, you know, not just with this game, but with various other games that use the same kind of business models. So for me, that this is a clear case of tech causing harm. But I just want to tell another story, which I think is a little bit less clear, and I'll let you judge for yourself whether you think there's actual harm here. And this is a story of my mother, actually. She is in her 70s, and she is a retired maternity nurse. And her motto in life is, you get what you give. And I would also say she's fairly tech savvy, especially for her age group. She was always the one that, you know, other nurses would go to when they had a problem with the computer, or even me, like if I wanted to know when the next iPhone is coming out. Anyway, my mother, she lives with my father in the outskirts of Auckland in New Zealand. And it's a little bit in the countryside where they live. And so when they get deliveries, like courier sent things, my mother always feels like they batch them up. They wait till there's a few deliveries in the area before they will come and send them out. And she would get frustrated because she'd be waiting for something, and then she'll go to the letterbox, or she'll get an email, and there'll be a note saying, oh, the courier driver had come and no one was at home. And this would really annoy her, because she's like, we were home all the time. Like, did they not come to the door? Did they not even knock? And frustrated even more because she felt she would now have to wait quite a while before they would come back again. And so when my brother and I were thinking about what do we get Mum for Christmas, we thought, and we knew about this problem, well, why not buy her a Ring doorbell? Now, if you don't know about these devices, what they are is like a camera that goes at your front door, and anytime they sense movement nearby, they start recording, and you get a message on your phone saying movement at your front door, and as well as that, you can talk to the person at the front door through the phone. And lo and behold, this device definitely solved my mother's problem with courier drivers. She was no longer missing them, and much happier. However, when I started to read around this topic around responsible tech and ways in which people are already starting to see tech causing harm, the Ring doorbell came up. And it came up in a couple of ways. One in which you probably have heard of, in that people have these devices in their house as like security cameras, and they have them in several rooms. And there have been cases where people have hacked into them and have had inappropriate conversations with young children through these devices. So not great, but not the problem that is affecting my parents. However, there was another claim in another article that said, well, you know what, these Ring doorbells are actually normalizing surveillance. They're getting us used to the idea that we are always being watched, and getting us to be okay with that. And I thought, you know what? I think this actually has had this impact on my mother, because lo and behold, what happened was, like, in a year after we gave this doorbell, my parents came to visit me here in London, and while they were away, they hired a friend of a friend to house sit. And of course, my mother still had her phone with her, and she would still get messages on her phone and recordings on her phone telling her there was movement at the front door. And lo and behold, what did she do? She spent, I would say, a lot of time entertaining herself, watching the comings and goings of the house sitter. So surveilling, if you like, surveilling the house sitter without her knowledge. So I have let my mother know that she's going to be part of this talk, and I even asked her what photo that she would like to have, and she didn't, in fact, choose this one. This is the one that she wanted. And I don't know whether that changes your mind about whether my mother surveilling someone without their knowledge was okay or not. Don't know, but thought it was amusing. But I think it's an interesting one, right? Because it's not clear. And my mother certainly doesn't think that she did anything wrong. But if I flip it and I put myself in the house sitter's position, I'm not sure that I really feel comfortable with someone watching me without my knowledge. So I tell this story, I think, not to like shame my mother, or I don't think she's really done anything grossly wrong, but it's just to show that some of these things are much more subtle than we think. And I think even if you think about like the Facebook like button, right, notoriously, that was built because people kept commenting on people's posts saying, I like that, that's great, wonderful, great, I like that. And no one wants to read 100 of those comments. So it's the natural thing, right, to build a like button and just have people press like. But I think now we know and we can see what kind of where that has led to. So I think it's just time for us to start having these conversations, having these debates, and hopefully to build up a little bit more of understanding of like where these lines are and what is okay and what is not okay for where we want our society to go. And also in my research, I have started reading Mike Montero's book, Ruined by Design. And this is something he says in there is, and it's a very good book, I thoroughly recommend it, that he tries to rile us up by saying, what goes on the web goes through us. We as technologists are in a very privileged position, and we already have a seat at the table. So we should use that responsibility just to start thinking. And like another way someone put it is, we need to start thinking not about what can we do, but what should we do. And the other way to help us think about this, and another quote that I like is, it's not okay just to take the immediate answer, right? We need to start thinking through, especially now that we have evidence of potential harms. What are those second order and third order consequences? What will happen actually if our product becomes the next Facebook or the next Amazon? And luckily, there's a number of people who have already been out there thinking about how we have those conversations. And ThoughtWorks actually, hopefully later on this year, is going to publish a playbook with all these tools and how they might help you in different situations. And there's 3 here that I thoroughly recommend trying out, and a really good place to get started. And they just help you expand your thinking, right? I think there's a lot of focus now on diversity, and I think diversity within the tech community is hugely needed, but it can only ever go so far. You will never have like the full representation of society as much as you try. You just won't. And I think these tools are sorely needed. And then just asking questions like, what will happen if 1 million people start using your product? What is the impact of the environment on doing that? What will happen if this gets in the hands of a bad actor? And so I thoroughly recommend that you look into these tools and start using them on your projects. And having said all that, like, I think on the face of it, it sounds what I'm suggesting is quite easy, right? We are already there. We already have a seat on the table. We are part of building these things, and we can sort of push it in a direction and in a good way. But I do want to sort of also recognize that it's not going to be easy. I think there's a couple of sort of winds, if you like, blowing against us that are going to make it hard. First is this bowl of ice cream. It's like, actually, it's well known that humans are not very good at thinking long term. We're very much short-term thinkers. And I think for me, this ice cream illustrates it very clearly. Like, I very much know that if I eat this bowl of ice cream, not only is it not going to be very good for my health or my waistline, I'm also probably going to feel absolutely awful after eating it. However, I have quite a sweet tooth, and like, it looks delicious. And I know if you did put it in front of me, like, I'm pretty sure that I would eat a lot of it, if not all of it. And that's even in a situation, right, when I know the consequences. So it's not a natural thing for us to do. I think it's something that we have to do consciously and that we have to practice. A second thing is the fact that we live in a capitalist society. And please excuse the very sexist phrasing of this quote. It is a quote from a book written in the early 1900s, book called The Jungle. And I think it still holds true today. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And that's just recognizing that the drivers of the companies and the markets in which we are operating are very much not driven always by ethics, right? They're driven by profit, by revenue, by user numbers. And so I think sometimes it is going to be difficult to say to your product manager, hey, I know that like you could get a lot of users to do X, by doing Y. But should we? Should we really addict them to this game so that they will pay £5 a pop to continue playing? And I think some of those conversations will be hard, and some people won't even want to recognise the ills that are being caused because the benefits for them in terms of revenue are too high. And the final thing is, again, it's from Mike Montero's book, and it just hit me quite hard because I think this is an excuse. We often tell ourselves within the tech industry that it's okay that I am doing X for this company, that I am helping work on fracking, say, because my company, I don't know, they give me 10% of my time to go and work for charities, and I go and pick up rubbish or something. And it's just like, I think he's very right. Like, it's not okay. Like, there are some things where it just is not okay. And we really need to start thinking about that and not allowing us to sort of have those excuses. But, and again, apologies for putting an old white man in my talk again, but I really like this quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it actually gives me a lot of hope. I also care a lot about the environment, and I listened to a podcast called Outrage and Optimism, and I really like the way in which they frame how you should tackle a problem. That, we should be outraged. We should be outraged that like these models that allow us to get addicted are running free, and that all this fake news, like the systems are tuned to like push fake news out there really fast. We should be outraged that these things are happening. But it is also important, really important, if we want things to change, to have optimism that we can change them. And I think culture is the way to do it. To be the one that like starts doing things differently, that starts having these conversations and raising these issues when we see them, and making it part of our practice. And like it's not going to be easy, like I've said, and we won't win every conversation that we have, but I think just starting is the way to go. And you never know, it might give your product manager or your CEO pause for thought. And although they might say no this time, maybe they might think next time, well, maybe I do need to think about that consequence. Or maybe it will give someone else the courage who has been seeing problems to step forward and say it. So yeah, I also to bring back this slide, because I think the thing in the top right hand corner really resonates for me. Like, we are free to make our mark. And I think even for me personally, my own personal journey with being a technologist has been challenging at times. And it's like, I found myself especially challenged when I was working for a large bank in the Netherlands during the financial crisis of 2008. And at the time, I was a contractor, and despite what's happening in the world, the bank still continued to hire me and to pay me quite a good salary. And meanwhile, you see lots of people losing their homes. Even a lot of my friends who, had invested their money in iSaver for a couple of weeks, that they potentially had lost their whole life savings. That was just gone. Until the banks got bailed out. But it was really hard to sort of equate all that stuff that was happening in the world with, and this bank's share price, who had, had gone rock bottom, with the fact that they were still paying me a lot of money to do this thing. And I could see, not a bad thing that we were working on, but certainly wasn't going to solve any of these problems that we were seeing out there in society. And yeah, I just think, like, although there are a lot of harms out there, I'm not excited about the harms, but I'm excited about the awakening that tech is not neutral, that we need to connect tech up with our values and our principles and our purpose. And I think if we can do that, I think that, like, tech will become like an even much more rewarding career if we know that what we're building is for good. So I have just want to end on this slide. I've stolen this quote as it's a byline of the Greta Thunberg documentary, and that says, "The future belongs to those that fight for it." So yeah, I hope this has inspired you to, like, just do something different, to go out there and stand up for what you believe in. So thank you.